The smell of burnt popcorn and butter hung in the air, mixed with the faint sweetness of spilled soda that had soaked into the old carpet years ago. The Regal Crown Theater was no palace. It was a relic. Its velvet curtains were faded, its ceiling tiles stained with watermarks from decades of leaks, and its marquee lights flickered like a dying heartbeat on Hollywood Boulevard. To most people, it was a place you passed on your way to the big multiplex down the street. But to Emily Carter, this shabby little theater was her world. At 24, Emily worked the late-night shift as a waitress at the theater's small cafe tucked in the lobby. She wore a black apron that smelled faintly of espresso, and her sneakers squeaked against the sticky floor tiles. Every night was the same. Refill coffee cups, clear crumpled candy wrappers, smile politely at customers who never remembered her name. She had once dreamed of more. Film school at UCLA, a director's chair with her name stenciled on the back, her mother in the front row of every premiere. But dreams had been buried when medical bills stacked higher than scripts. Her mother's cancer had drained everything, and when she passed away, Emily's future went with her. Now she was invisible, just another server in the dark corners of a fading theater. That night, the crowd had already shuffled out, leaving behind the usual battlefield of popcorn tubs and soda cups. Emily sighed, pushing her cart down the aisles, humming under her breath to fight the silence. As she bent to pick up a half-crushed candy box, something caught her eye. Wedged between two seats was a folded scrap of paper. She almost tossed it in the trash without looking. But when she unfolded it, she froze. It wasn't just paper. It was an old movie ticket. The edges were yellowed and fragile, the kind of fragile that spoke of decades gone by. The print was barely legible, faded by time, but she could still make out the date, 1963. And on the back, in messy, looping ink, was something that made her heart skip a beat. A sketch. It wasn't the doodle of a bored teenager. It was detailed. Lines of an old Hollywood set, sweeping arches, camera positions marked with arrows, notes scribbled in shorthand. Emily's breath caught. Whoever had drawn this knew filmmaking. And not just filmmaking, they knew vision. She stared at it, her fingers trembling. Still cleaning this dump, Emmy? A voice called from the aisle. Emily startled, nearly dropping the ticket. It was Rachel Flores, her best friend and fellow server, dragging a trash bag over her shoulder. Rachel was 2 years older, sharp-witted, and the only reason Emily survived the long shifts without losing her mind. "Yeah," Emily muttered, slipping the ticket into her apron. "Just the usual trash." Rachel dropped the bag and squinted at her. "What's that?" Emily hesitated, then pulled the ticket out. Found it stuck in the seats. Rachel's eyes widened the moment she saw the sketch. Her hand shot out, snatching it gently like it was made of glass. "Emily, do you know what this looks like?" "It's just an old ticket," Emily said, though her voice cracked with doubt. Rachel shook her head, her dark hair swaying. "No, I've seen this style before. Back when I was in community college, I took an art history of film class. This," she tapped the looping handwriting, "looks exactly like Marcus Leone's notes." Emily frowned. "Marcus who?" Rachel let out a frustrated laugh. "Are you kidding me? Marcus Leone, the legend. The director who made Sunset Riders and Echoes in the Rain. He was obsessed with sketching scenes on whatever paper he had. Napkins, receipts, tickets, you name it. If this is his, Emily, this could be worth millions." The word millions hit Emily like a slap. She looked down at the fragile paper in her hands, her chest tightening. "Millions? For this?" Rachel leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Collectors pay insane money for anything connected to Leone. His final film was never finished. People have hunted for his missing notes for decades. If this is legit, you might have just found a piece of film history." Emily's throat went dry. Her mind flooded with images. Her mother's hospital bills, the stack of late rent notices on her counter, her dream of film school buried under years of grief. If Rachel was right, this scrap of paper could change everything. But another thought quickly followed. If it really was worth millions, someone would try to take it from her. Emily shoved the ticket back into her apron pocket. "Don't tell anyone," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Promise me." Rachel nodded, eyes wide. "I promise. But Emily, you can't just sit on this. You have to get it authenticated. And soon." Emily nodded, but fear gnawed at her. She wasn't ready. Not for this. She thought about her mother, about the way she used to say, "Movies keep us alive, Emmy. They remind us to dream. even when the world is cruel. Her mom had been the one to introduce her to Leone's films. Watching them on their tiny TV while curled up together on the couch, Emily pressed a hand against her apron pocket, feeling the fragile paper inside. Was it fate, or was it just trash that would destroy her life if anyone found out? The lights in the theater dimmed as Rachel flicked the last switch, casting the room into darkness. The neon glow from the boulevard outside bled through the lobby windows, painting the walls in tired colors. Emily whispered under her breath, her voice shaky but determined. If this is real, it's not just a ticket, it's my second chance. She didn't know yet that those words were about to change everything, because outside, on Hollywood Boulevard, a man in a tailored suit leaned against a black car, watching the theater's doors with sharp eyes. His name was Richard Hale, and he had already heard whispers about a waitress who found something extraordinary. And he was waiting. The ticket rode home against Emily's heartbeat, folded inside her apron pocket like a live wire. The night air on Hollywood Boulevard felt colder than usual, as if the city had turned down its neon to listen. She took the bus, gripping the pole with one hand and the ticket with the other, replaying Rachel's whisper on a loop. This could be worth millions. People talked over her, laughed, argued about ride shares and rent. None of them knew her palms were sweating around a 60-year-old time bomb. Her studio apartment smelled faintly of bleach and coffee. On the counter sat a stack of red-stamped envelopes. Late rent, overdue utilities, a medical debt letter that never stopped arriving no matter how many times she paid a little. Emily turned on the lamp and laid the ticket beneath the light. Up close, the ink looked almost alive. Pencil marks showed camera placements. Quick, confident slashes suggested arches, columns, a staircase descending into shadow. And in the corner, along the perforated edge, 2 letters. ML. Emily swallowed. "Come on," she whispered to the paper. "Tell me who you are." She opened her mother's old cigar box, the one where Mom kept ticket stubs from the movies they'd watched together on their couch. Sunset Riders twice, Echoes in the Rain 3 times, a battered DVD, a post-it in her mother's looping hand. "Movies keep us alive, Emmy." Emily pressed the post-it to her chest, then turned back to the ticket. She took photos on her phone. She zoomed in on the initials. She searched Marcus Leone handwriting. Image after image flashed, napkins and, yes, tickets, covered in the same darting notes, the same decisive arrows. There was a story about his final unfinished film. Rumors of lost sketches. Collectors offering cash for any scrap. Her phone buzzed. "Rachel. You home?" "Yeah, it looks real," Emily typed. "Or it looks like it wants to be real." "We should tell Mrs. Flores," Rachel replied. She knew everyone back then. She might know if Leone ever stepped foot in this place. Emily stared at the message. Mrs. Flores, owner of the Regal Crown, brittle and elegant in her 70s, with silver hair swept back like a movie star's. She had started working there as a teenager. She kept old press clippings in frames and spoke about directors like they were house guests. If anyone could anchor the ticket to a real night, a real screening, it was her. "Tomorrow morning," Emily typed. First thing, she slid the ticket into a fresh Ziploc bag, then tucked the bag into a shoebox. She placed the shoebox in the oven. She didn't even bake, but the oven felt safer than a drawer. She set her phone alarm and crawled into bed. Sleep came in shards. Morning sunlight pushed through the blinds. Emily made instant coffee, checked the oven, exhaled. The ticket was still there. Good. She packed it into the bottom of her backpack and hurried to the theater. The Regal Crown felt different in daylight. Less mystery, more dust. Mrs. Flores stood on a step stool behind the concessions counter, polishing a brass popcorn chute. Pearls at her throat, cat-eye glasses perched at the end of her nose. "Morning, Mrs. F.," Emily called. Mrs. Flores turned, a smile lighting her face. "My star of the night shift. You look like you slept inside a blender." Emily laughed despite herself. "You have a minute?" "I found something last night." Mrs. Flores stepped down carefully. Emily glanced around the empty lobby, then led her through the hallway to the old projection booth, her favorite room in the building. It smelled like warm metal and dust. Film canisters lined the shelves like sleeping soldiers. A single window looked out over the auditorium where torn velvet seats waited in rows. Emily unzipped her backpack. "Please don't freak out," she said, and she passed the Ziploc bag to Mrs. Flores. The older woman held the ticket as if it were a bird with a broken wing. Her eyes softened, then narrowed with focus. She traced the ink with a fingertip hovering, never touching. God, she whispered. That handwriting. You recognize it? Mrs. Flores didn't answer immediately. She moved to the window, tilting the ticket so the light caught the pencil grooves. Marcus Leone came here once, she said quietly. Summer of '63, a charity screening. He brought a stack of rewrites and a bad temper. He drew on everything. I remember because the manager yelled at me for sweeping his masterpieces into a trash bin. She chuckled, small and sad. We dug them out, sent them back to the studio. But he kept some. Slipped them into a coat pocket, maybe. Or a ticket. Emily's chest tightened. Do you think this is his? Mrs. Flores lifted the ticket to the glass. I think it might be. She pointed at the initials. He signed like that when he was moving fast. And this shot? This staircase. It looks like the storyboards for the film he never finished. Those storyboards were rumored to be incomplete. Emily felt her knees go weak. If this is real, what do I do? Mrs. Flores lowered the ticket. You protect it, her gaze sharpened. You also authenticate it, but carefully. People will smell the blood in the water. Some will want to help. Others will want to help themselves. As if summoned, the theater door chimed. Voices floated up from the lobby. Emily peeked through the booth window. A young man in a denim jacket stood at the cafe counter, tapping his phone, camera bag slung across his chest. He looked familiar. Sandy hair, curious eyes. Rachel waved from behind the espresso machine. Mrs. Flores followed her gaze. Friend of yours? He's been in a few times, Emily said. Orders a double espresso and stares at the old posters like they're sacred texts. Let's meet him, Mrs. Flores said. Down in the lobby, the young man glanced up as they approached. He smiled, disarmingly earnest. Hey, Emily, right? I'm Daniel. We met, well, we didn't meet. I tripped over your mop bucket last week and you pretended not to notice. He stuck out his hand. Thanks for that. Emily shook it, trying to keep her face neutral. Do you always introduce yourself with your most embarrassing moment? He grinned. I'm a journalist. Humiliation is part of the brand. Journalist, Mrs. Flores said. Freelance, Daniel replied. I do a lot of long form for real time in the frame. I'm obsessed with old theaters and lost films. And look, this is awkward, but I heard a rumor last night. A friend texted me. Said a waitress at the Regal found something interesting after closing. Rachel froze mid-pour. Emily felt the floor tilt. Daniel read the room, lifting his hands. I'm not here to dig or steal, I swear. If there's a story that could save this place, I want to help tell it right. And if there isn't, I'll drink my espresso and quietly leave. Emily shot a look at Mrs. Flores. The older woman's expression said, Your call. What exactly did you hear? Emily asked. That it might be connected to Marcus Leone, Daniel said softly, and that if it is, people with deep pockets will notice fast. Emily's heartbeat found her throat. She glanced toward the glass doors. Outside, a black sedan idled at the curb. The same shape as last night. She felt watched. Mrs. Flores stepped forward, shoulders squared. Young man, if you're here to help, you'll start by understanding that anything you see or hear stays between us until we say otherwise. Agreed, Daniel said without hesitation. No recordings. No notes unless you allow it. You lead. Emily studied his face. There was the reporter's appetite, sure. But there was something else, reverence. Like the kind she felt holding the ticket. Okay, she said. You can look. Not touch, she nodded to Rachel. Can you close the cafe for 10? Rachel flipped the sign and shot the deadbolt. Already on it. They climbed back to the projection booth. Emily took a breath, unsealed the bag, and slipped the ticket onto the old rewind bench. Daniel leaned in carefully, eyes wide. Holy language, Mrs. Flores murmured, but she was smiling. Daniel looked up. If this is authentic, you're holding a missing page of film history. He pointed, hovering. These arrows? Leone's shorthand for dolly moves. And that ML, it's consistent with his quick signature. Emily hugged her arms around herself. How do we prove it? Handwriting analysis is one piece, Daniel said. Paper dating. Ink chemistry. Provenance, who had it, when, why. And the hardest part, keeping it safe while we do all that. A shadow slid across the booth window. Emily's head snapped up. Down in the auditorium, a tall man in a tailored suit stood near the aisle, looking straight up at the booth's little square of glass. He lifted one hand in a polite, almost courtly wave. Daniel followed her gaze. Friend of yours? No, Emily whispered. The man turned and disappeared into the lobby. A moment later, the theater door chimed again. The black sedan pulled away from the curb. Mrs. Flores wiped her palms on her skirt. We need a plan. Emily stared at the ticket, at the arrows in the staircase, and the two initials that had detonated her quiet life. Her voice was steady when she spoke. We authenticate it. We control the story. And we don't open the door for men in suits. She slipped the ticket back into the Ziploc, feeling the weight of a new world settle onto her shoulders. Outside, the city hummed, oblivious. Inside, 3 people stood over a shoebox-sized secret worth more than the theater, more than all their debts combined. The projection lamp buzzed to life as Mrs. Flores flipped a switch. Bathing the booth in a soft, steady glow, Daniel looked at Emily. Ready to make some enemies? Emily met his eyes. Ready to make this right. But when the phone behind the concessions counter started ringing, shrill, insistent, unlisted number on the display, who was already calling, and how much did they know? The ringing phone echoed through the empty lobby like an alarm bell. Emily froze halfway down the stairs from the projection booth. Rachel glanced at her nervously, then reached over and picked up. Regal Crown Theater, Rachel speaking. A pause. Her brows knit together. She turned toward Emily. It's for you. Emily's chest tightened. Almost no one ever called the theater asking for her. She hesitated, then took the receiver. Hello? A smooth male voice slid across the line, rich and polished. Ms. Carter, I presume? Forgive the intrusion. My name is Richard Hale. I believe you may have stumbled upon something unusual. Emily's fingers tightened around the receiver. She looked toward Mrs. Flores and Daniel, both watching her from the booth stairs. I think you have the wrong number, she said carefully. Richard chuckled softly. No, I don't. Word travels fast in this city, especially about legends like Marcus Leone. You found one of his sketches, didn't you? A little doodle on the back of a movie ticket. I'd like to help you protect it. Her mouth went dry. How do you even know about that? I know people, he said simply. And I know opportunities. You're a waitress working late shifts in a theater that barely pays rent. I, on the other hand, run one of the most prestigious galleries in Los Angeles. I could make sure that little ticket ends up exactly where it belongs, in the hands of someone who appreciates it. Meaning, you? Meaning collectors who understand value. And yes, perhaps myself as well. His voice lowered, coaxing. We're not talking about a trinket, Ms. Carter. We're talking millions. But more importantly, recognition. Imagine your name on the certificate of provenance. Emily Carter, the woman who rediscovered Leone's last sketch. The girl from the cafe who became part of history. Emily's pulse pounded. He was dangling everything she ever wanted. But something in his tone made her stomach churn. Too smooth. Too certain. I need to think, she said. Of course, Richard said warmly. I'll make it easy. Meet me at Cafe Montrose, 2 blocks from the theater tomorrow morning. Bring the ticket. I'll have paperwork ready to ensure your protection and payment. 1 signature and you can stop working late nights forever. The line clicked dead. Emily lowered the receiver slowly. Daniel broke the silence. That sounded exactly like a wolf inviting Little Red Riding Hood to dinner. Mrs. Flores crossed her arms. Hale, of course. That man's been circling Leone memorabilia for decades. He doesn't want to protect you, Emily. He wants to own you. Rachel bit her lip. So, what do we do? If she doesn't meet him, he'll just keep circling. And if she does, he'll try to take it. Emily pressed her hands to her forehead. I can't, this is too much. One day I'm scraping gum off theater seats, the next day someone's offering me millions over the phone. Mrs. Flores placed a steady hand on her shoulder. That's how they trap you. They promise the dream, but it's really a cage. Daniel stepped forward. Then maybe we play along. Meet him, see what he offers, but don't sign anything. Let him think you're considering it. Meanwhile, we gather proof, authentication, a legal advisor, whatever it takes. If he's the snake we think he is, he'll show his fangs soon enough. Emily looked between them, fear twisting in her chest. What if he sets me up? What if he finds a way to frame me? He'll try, Mrs. Flores said bluntly. But if you let fear make the choices, he wins without a fight. That night, Emily barely slept. She kept replaying Richard's voice, smooth as velvet, promising freedom from debt, promising recognition. She saw her mother's face, pale in a hospital bed, whispering, Movies keep us alive, Emmy. Don't let them steal your dream. By morning, she felt hollowed out but resolved. She pulled on her cleanest shirt, tucked the ticket safely into her backpack still sealed in its Ziploc bag, and met Rachel and Daniel outside the Regal Crown. "Backup?" Emily asked. "Backup," Daniel said firmly, his camera bag slung across his chest. "We'll sit a few tables away recording. If he tries anything shady, we'll have evidence." Rachel squeezed Emily's arm. "And if he offers you champagne, don't drink it." The three of them walked together down Hollywood Boulevard, the morning sun glaring against the storefronts. Café Montrose sat on the corner, all glass windows and marble tables full of executives on their laptops. In the back corner, Richard Hale sat alone in a gray suit sharp enough to cut glass. Silver hair swept back, a gold watch flashing as he raised his coffee cup. He saw Emily and smiled like he'd been expecting her all his life. "Ms. Carter," he said, standing to shake her hand. "You're even braver than I thought. Please sit." Emily sat slowly, her backpack pressed to her side. Daniel and Rachel slipped into a table near the window, pretending to read menus. Richard leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You brought it, didn't you? The sketch?" Emily's throat tightened. "Maybe. Why?" "Because that paper is a time bomb in your hands," Richard said smoothly. "One leak, one whisper in the wrong ear, and you'll be accused of theft, forgery, fraud, you name it. People will come after you, and the truth won't matter. All that matters is who has the resources to spin the story. That's me. I can protect you from all of it, but only if you trust me." He slid a folder across the table. Emily opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were contracts, dense with legal jargon, and on top a check already written out with her name, $500,000, her breath caught. $500,000 sitting in her hands. More money than she'd ever seen. More money than her mother's medical bills had ever demanded. Richard smiled. "All you have to do is sign. Walk away rich, safe, and free. No drama, no lawsuits, just a better life." Emily stared at the check, her pulse hammering. She imagined paying every debt, buying a new apartment, applying to film school again. She imagined Rachel's face when she said the Regal Crown could finally be renovated. But she also imagined Richard laughing in some boardroom, parading the ticket as his personal prize, erasing her name from history. Her fingers twitched over the pen. Across the cafe, Daniel's camera clicked softly. Rachel's eyes widened, urging, "Don't do it." Emily lifted her gaze and met Richard's calm, predatory smile. "This feels too easy," she said quietly. Richard chuckled, sipping his coffee. "That's the beauty of it, my dear. For once in your life, things can be easy." Emily set down the pen. "Easy usually means it's a trap." Richard's smile froze. His eyes narrowed just for a fraction of a second. Then the charm returned. "You'll come around," he said smoothly, "because the world isn't kind to dreamers. And when it turns on you, I'll be waiting." He stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked out, leaving the contract and the check on the table. Emily stared at the paper, her heart pounding. She hadn't signed. But now Richard Hale knew she had the ticket, and he wasn't going to stop. Rumors travel faster than light in Hollywood. By the end of the week, Emily couldn't walk into the Regal Crown without feeling eyes on her. Customers lingered at the cafe counter longer than usual, not for the stale muffins or watery coffee, but to whisper, "That's her. The girl with the Leone ticket." Emily tried to keep her head down, her apron tied tight, her smile polite. But whispers crawled under her skin. Every time someone laughed too loudly, she imagined it was about her. Every time a phone camera tilted in her direction, she wondered if they were catching proof that she still had the sketch. It didn't help that her manager, Mr. Grayson, had picked up on the noise. A man with thinning hair and a temper short as a film trailer, he cornered her behind the popcorn machine one evening. "You stealing from customers, Carter?" he hissed, his tie splattered with butter. Emily froze. "What? Don't play dumb. People say you found something in the theater, something valuable. Now, if it came from a paying customer, that's theft. And if it's some forgery scam, that's fraud. Either way, this theater won't get dragged into it." Her chest tightened. "I didn't steal anything." It was trash. Stuck between the seats, Grayson jabbed a finger at her apron. "Trash doesn't end up worth millions." "Don't make me call the cops." Rachel appeared at her side, arms crossed. "Back off, Grayson. You'd have fired her already if you actually had grounds. You're just scared the Regal Crown will end up in headlines you can't control." Grayson scowled but backed off. muttering under his breath as he stomped away. Emily exhaled shakily. Rachel squeezed her arm. "They're circling, Emmy, you can feel it, and they could." By Saturday, a blogger had posted an article. Waitress finds lost Leon sketch at rundown theater. The story spread like wildfire, picked up by movie forums, retweeted by cinephiles, dissected on YouTube channels. Photos of Emily surfaced, grainy phone shots of her wiping tables, pouring coffee, carrying trays. She looked tired in everyone and somehow guilty. Daniel showed her the article on his laptop at a diner booth that night. "They don't even have proof, but look at this engagement. People love an underdog story." "But half the comments," Emily scrolled, "she's faking it. Probably drew it herself and aged the paper in the oven. Another scammer trying to cash in on Leon's name." Her hands shook. "They already think I'm lying." Daniel reached across the table. "Hey, that's what rumors do. They fill in gaps with poison. But facts can clean it up. We get authentication, you control the story. Not Hale, not some blogger. You." "Easier said than done," Emily muttered. "Hale's already planting seeds. I can feel it, she wasn't wrong." On Sunday, 2 men in suits showed up at the theater, flashing badges that said private security consultants. They asked Grayson for the item. Grayson, thrilled to play gatekeeper, refused them entry but gave them a long look at Emily. By the time she left work, a black sedan was parked across the street, its tinted windows aimed like eyes. Emily lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow circles. She remembered her mother's voice, fragile but fierce. "The world isn't kind to dreamers, Emmy, but you can't stop dreaming." The next morning, the phone rang in her apartment. She let it go to voicemail. Richard Hale's voice filled the room. "Ms. Carter, I warned you. Declining my offer doesn't make me disappear. It makes you vulnerable. People are starting to doubt you. The longer you hold on to that ticket, the more dangerous it becomes. Call me before this turns ugly." Emily deleted the message, but her hands shook so hard she almost dropped the phone. By Monday, the theater lobby was packed with strangers, reporters with cameras, collectors with briefcases, curious fans pretending to buy popcorn just to get close to her. Mr. Grayson finally lost patience. "Carter," he barked. "Office, now." Emily followed him down the narrow hall, Rachel trailing like a bodyguard. Inside the office, cluttered with faded posters and a humming mini-fridge, Grayson shut the door. "This circus is killing business," he snapped. "Half the crowd's here for you, not the movies. The other half's scared off by the press outside. You're suspended until this blows over." Emily's stomach dropped. "Suspended? For what?" "For being a distraction," Grayson said bluntly, "and for putting this theater at risk. If that sketch turns out fake, we'll look like accomplices. If it's real, you're sitting on stolen property. Either way, I'm not letting you drag us down." Rachel slammed her hand on the desk. "She didn't steal anything. You should be supporting her, not throwing her under the bus." Grayson's face reddened. "This is business, not charity. Carter, hand in your keys. You're done here for now." Emily's throat burned. She fumbled her keys onto the desk, her vision blurring. She turned and walked out, past Rachel's protests, past the popcorn machine that still smelled faintly of her late nights. Out on the sidewalk, the air felt colder, harsher. She hugged her backpack to her chest like a lifeline. Rachel stormed out after her. "He's a coward." "Don't let him break you." Emily wiped her eyes. "I lost the only steady job I had, and now I'm the thief, the liar, the faker. Everyone's already decided." Daniel appeared from across the street holding a folder of documents. "Then we proved them wrong. I got in touch with a handwriting analyst who's worked on Leone archives. If he confirms the sketch, we'll have our first piece of evidence." Emily looked between them, her fierce best friend, her determined journalist ally. Her world was crumbling, but for the first time, she felt like maybe she wasn't standing in the rubble alone. She swallowed hard, clutching the backpack. "Then let's fight," Rachel grinned. "That's the Emily I know." Daniel nodded, but his expression was serious. "Good. Because Hale isn't just after the ticket. He's after your name. And he's not going to stop until one of you is ruined." Emily exhaled, a shaky laugh escaping. "Well, I've been broke and invisible my whole life. Maybe it's time to see what happens when I refuse to disappear." Behind them, the black sedan idled again, its engine purring. A camera lens glinted through the tinted glass. The battle wasn't just about the ticket anymore. It was about survival, and Emily knew. This was only the beginning. Rain slicked the streets of Los Angeles, smearing neon signs into watery brushstrokes across the windshield of Rachel's old Corolla. Emily sat in the passenger seat, clutching her backpack like a shield. The ticket inside felt heavier than steel, like it was dragging her whole life into the abyss. She hadn't worked in 3 days. Grayson's suspension had turned into silence. Her rent was due in 2 weeks. The whispers online had grown into roars: fraud, scam, gold digger. And still, the black sedan followed, sometimes parked across from her apartment, sometimes trailing down Sunset, always close enough to remind her she wasn't free. Then Richard Hale called again. This time, his voice was softer, almost paternal. "Ms. Carter, I realize I frightened you. That was never my intention. The world has turned cruel, hasn't it? Reporters hounding you, strangers accusing you. You don't deserve this." A pause, gentle as silk. "Let me make it right, please. Have dinner with me. No contracts, no pressure, just let me help you breathe again." Rachel had wanted to throw the phone out the window. He's a shark. Sharks don't do dinner, they circle until they smell blood. But Emily heard something else. Not just menace, temptation. He offered calm, order, and exit. And God, she was tired of fighting. So when Hale's sleek black town car pulled up to the curb outside her apartment the following evening, Emily climbed in. The interior smelled faintly of leather and sandalwood. Richard Hale himself sat across from her, impeccably dressed, his smile warm. "You look exhausted," he said softly. "No one should suffer for stumbling into history." Emily pressed her hands together. "If you're just going to wave contracts at me again, I should get out now." "No contracts tonight," Hale assured. "Just food. And perhaps friendship." The car purred through the city until it stopped in front of the Orpheum Club, a restaurant so exclusive Emily had only ever seen its velvet rope from across the street. Crystal chandeliers sparkled inside. Waiters in tuxedos bowed at Hale's arrival. He guided her to a secluded corner table, where champagne glasses already waited. "To freedom," he toasted. "Yours." Emily touched the rim of her glass but didn't drink. "Why me? Why this much attention? It's just paper." "Not just paper," Hale corrected gently. "It's legacy. And legacies need caretakers. Men like me, we're used to that burden. But you," he gestured with his glass, "you're drowning. I see it in your eyes. Let me lift you out." For a moment, Emily felt herself sway. $500,000, safety, the end of black sedans tailing her every move. It shimmered before her like a mirage. Hale leaned closer. "Picture it. No more debt. No more cheap apartments. You walk into film school with funding, with your name tied forever to Leon. All I ask is trust. The rest disappears," her mother's voice whispered in her mind. "The world isn't kind to dreamers, Emmy, but don't stop dreaming." Her throat tightened. "It sounds too perfect." Hale's smile didn't falter. "That's because it is. And I don't make empty promises." At that moment, the waiter arrived with a silver tray. On it lay a folder, sleek leather-bound. Emily's heart thudded. "I thought you said no contracts." "Not contracts," Hale said smoothly. "Protection. My legal team has drafted statements verifying your innocence, ensuring the ticket's authenticity remains undisputed. You sign, I handle the wolves outside. Consider it. Armor." He slid the folder toward her. Inside were pages of typed assurances, neat signatures at the bottom. Lawyers, collectors, experts. Her name was left blank, waiting, and on top, another check. This one wasn't $500,000. It was $1 million. Emily's pulse roared in her ears. 1 million. Enough to pay debts, enough to start over, enough to finally breathe. She picked up the pen. Across the room, a flash went off. Quick, subtle, a camera. Emily's head jerked up. At another table, a man in a suit lowered his phone, pretending to scroll. Another flash, another angle. Suddenly, she understood this wasn't dinner. This was a stage. If she signed, there would be photos. Waitress cashes in, sells ticket to collector Hale for 7 figures. Public opinion would be sealed. The underdog turned sellout. Leon's legacy reduced to a transaction, and she'd be the villain in every headline. Her hand shook. She set the pen down. Hale's eyes sharpened just a flicker. Something wrong. Emily's chest heaved. "You said no contracts. But this is just another leash." The warmth drained from his smile. "Careful, Ms. Carter. Opportunity rarely knocks twice." She pushed the folder back across the table. "Then maybe it's not opportunity. Maybe it's a trap." For the first time, Hale's mask slipped. His voice dropped cold as marble. You're playing a dangerous game. I've ruined men stronger than you with a single headline. Don't test me, Emily's skin prickled. She stood, her chair scraping the marble floor. Then ruin me, but you won't own me. She turned and walked out, her legs trembling, her lungs burning. Outside, Rachel's Corolla screeched to the curb. Daniel leaned out the window, camera in hand. We got it all, he hissed. Photos, recordings. He tried to corner you. Exactly what we needed. Emily collapsed into the back seat, adrenaline making her shake. He offered me $1 million. And for a second her voice cracked. I almost said yes. Rachel floored the gas, pulling them into traffic. Almost isn't yes. And now we've got proof he's playing dirty. Daniel twisted in his seat, his eyes burning with urgency. But Emily, he won't stop here. He tried sweet poison and you spat it out. Next comes venom. He'll go public and he'll paint you as the liar. Emily clutched her backpack, feeling the fragile ticket against her chest. The city lights blurred outside the window, sharp and unforgiving. For the first time, she realized Hale wasn't just after Leone's sketch. He was after her soul, and if she faltered, he'd take both. The first headline hit like a punch to the gut. Waitress caught in $1 million scam. Collector sounds alarm. Emily woke to the buzz of her phone exploding with notifications. Her name plastered across entertainment blogs, gossip sites, and even The Hollywood Reporter. The articles quoted Richard Hale directly. I tried to help her. Instead, she attempted to pass off a forgery as authentic. She's young, misguided, but fraud is fraud. By noon, it wasn't just articles. It was hashtags. Leon scam. Hard ticket fraud girl. On Twitter, her photo, grainy mid-blink, was everywhere, captioned with sneers. Probably traced it off Google Images. Another broke wannabe trying to cash in. She looks guilty in every picture. Emily sat on the floor of her apartment, her knees pulled to her chest. The ticket lay in its Ziploc bag on the coffee table, fragile as glass under the weight of a hurricane. Rachel paced the room, fuming. He flipped the script. That snake flipped the script before you could even catch your breath. Daniel sat cross-legged across from Emily, his laptop open. He released statements to every major outlet before dawn. Timed it perfectly. He's shaping the narrative. Him as the savior, you as the scammer. Classic PR warfare. Emily buried her face in her arms. I can't fight this. I'm nobody. I don't have lawyers, I don't have money, I don't even have a job anymore. Her voice cracked. Maybe I should just give it to him. Let it end. Rachel knelt beside her, grabbing her shoulders. Don't you dare. That's exactly what he wants. He's trying to break you so you crawl to him begging for protection. Daniel nodded grimly. And once you do, he controls the story forever. He'll erase you like you never existed. Emily lifted her head, her eyes red. But look at me. Everyone already believes him. I can't leave my apartment without cameras. I can't go back to the theater. Even Grayson thinks I'm a thief. Rachel's jaw clenched. Then we prove them wrong. We get the damn thing authenticated. Daniel closed his laptop. I already set up a meeting. A handwriting expert who's verified Leone's notes before. But he's nervous. The second Hale hears, he'll try to bury it. Emily swallowed. And if the expert says it's fake? Silence hung heavy. Daniel finally said, then we regroup. But Emily? Every bone in my body says it's real. And Hale knows it. That's why he's hitting so hard. That afternoon, Emily tried to step outside. She made it 10 steps before a crowd of reporters swarmed. Microphone shoved in her face, flashes blinding her. Emily, are you defrauding collectors? Did Richard Hale offer you money to keep quiet? Are you the mastermind behind the Leone hoax? Emily stammered, shielding her face. I can't, please let me through. One reporter shoved too close and Emily stumbled back against a lamppost. Cameras clicked furiously, capturing her pale face, her shaking hands. Within minutes, the images were online, captioned, "Scammer cracks under pressure." Rachel dragged her back inside, slamming the door. Emily collapsed on the couch, sobbing. They hate me. I didn't even say anything and they hate me. Rachel wrapped an arm around her. They don't hate you, Emmy, they hate the lie he fed them. There's a difference, but Emily didn't believe it. Not anymore. That night, she sat alone at the kitchen table, the ticket spread out before her. The ink seemed darker, more menacing. Was it possible she'd fooled herself? Maybe she wanted it to be real so badly she couldn't see the truth. Maybe Hale was right. Maybe she was just a waitress clinging to a scrap of paper, spinning fantasies. Her phone buzzed again. A voicemail. Richard Hale's voice, calm as ice. "Miss Carter, you're drowning. The press, the public, they've already decided. But I can still save you. One call, one signature, and this nightmare ends. Sleep on it. Tomorrow the offer disappears." Emily's stomach twisted. She imagined walking into his office, handing him the ticket, watching the chaos evaporate. Silence. Peace. She whispered to the empty room. Maybe I should. But then her gaze fell on the cigar box on the shelf, the one with her mother's notes and ticket stubs. She pulled out the post-it, her mother's handwriting looping across it. "Movies keep us alive, Emmy. Don't let them steal your dream." Her chest ached. Tears blurred her vision. "I miss you, Mom," she whispered. "I wish you were here to tell me what to do." The phone buzzed again. A text from Daniel. "Don't give up. We've got the expert tomorrow at 10. Be ready. Trust me." Emily clutched the post-it in one hand and the ticket in the other. The storm outside her window pounded the glass, matching the chaos in her chest. She was at the breaking point. One more push and she might collapse, but somewhere deep inside a stubborn ember glowed. Hale wanted her crushed, invisible, erased. If she gave in, he won. If she fought, maybe, just maybe, her mother's voice would prove right. Emily wiped her face, set the ticket back in its bag, and whispered, "Tomorrow decides everything." Outside, across the street, the black sedan idled again. A figure sat inside, watching the faint light glowing from Emily's apartment window. And in a corner office miles away, Richard Hale smiled at the headlines he had orchestrated, pouring himself a glass of scotch. He believed he had already won. But the storm wasn't done yet. The lab smelled like toner, cotton gloves, and fear. Emily sat at the edge of a stainless steel table, while a gray-haired man in a white coat, Dr. Alan Kessler, forensic document examiner and Lyon archive consultant, lowered a magnifier onto the ticket as if docking a spaceship. "First rule," he said quietly, eyes on the glass. "Provenance talks. Second rule, paper talks louder." Daniel stood beside him with a notebook he wasn't writing in, honoring his promise. Rachel hovered against the wall, arms folded tight, like she could hold the room together with muscle alone. Mrs. Flores perched on a stool, pearl steady, jaw set. Kessler adjusted the light and hummed in the back of his throat. "Huh." Emily gripped her knees. "Huh? Good or huh? Bad?" He didn't look up. "Huh. Interesting." He slid on cotton gloves and angled the light. "See these fibers? Ticket stock from the early 60s often used rag content. Yours has it, linen and cotton blend, not modern wood pulp." He lifted the magnifier. "Now the image layer. Pencil first, then ballpoint. Ballpoint ink has a dye curve. With age, it oxidizes and shifts hue. This hue is right for mid-century Bic royal blue. That's promising." Emily exhaled slowly, afraid to hope. "Promising isn't proof." "No," Kessler agreed, reaching for a thin UV wand. "But proof likes company." He killed the overheads. The room went violet. The ticket glowed faintly, fibers blooming like stars. As he passed the wand over the corner, a ghostly line brightened, an embossed stamp hidden in the paper itself near the perforation. Kessler leaned closer. "Well, would you look at that?" "What?" Daniel asked, voice tight. "Watermark," Kessler said. "Not a manufacturer's, a venue's." He flicked the lights back on and pointed with a glass rod. "RCT 1963 Regal Crown Theater." Mrs. Flores's hand flew to her mouth. "We had a custom run for the charity screening," she whispered. "The manager bragged about it for weeks, said it made us feel like the Pantages." Her eyes brimmed. "I'd forgotten." Emily's heartbeat stumbled. "So, it really came from our theater." That night, Kessler nodded thoughtfully. "Paper checks out. Venue watermark checks out. Now handwriting." He set the magnifier over the looping initials at the edge. ML. Leon's quick signature is like a metronome gone wild. Sharp entry stroke. Exaggerated exit curl. You have both. But I'm not satisfied until the blind tells a story. "The blind?" Rachel asked. "Pressure marks," Kessler said. He slid the ticket onto a matte black pad and adjusted a raking light, sending shadows across the paper's surface. Fine grooves, barely there, appeared beneath the letters. He grinned, sudden and boyish. "There you are." He laid a transparent overlay over the ticket, then pulled a leather folder from a locked cabinet. Inside were high-resolution rubbings of Leon's notebooks, donated by the estate for authentication training. He matched curves, angles, the tilt of an arrowhead. The peculiar way Leon dotted an I with a dash when writing in a hurry. Layer by layer, the geometry aligned. Kessler looked up at Emily. "This is him. I'd stake my license." Emily didn't realize she was crying until Rachel pressed a tissue into her hand. Her vision warped, then cleared around the edges of a stunned laugh. "It's real," she whispered. "It's actually real." "Real, yes," Kessler said. "But the question isn't only authenticity, it's context." He pointed to a scrawl near the stairs. "Pull 40 feet, enter shadow." Next to it, an abbreviation, ER. Daniel's eyes widened. "Echoes in the rain. Leon's unfinished film," Kessler said. "Urban legend says the last act was storyboarded and lost. If this is a blocking sketch for Act 3, it's not just valuable, it's a Rosetta Stone." Emily clutched the edge of the table. "So why would Hale say it's fake?" Kessler's mouth flattened. "Because truth gets expensive when it contradicts a collection." He opened a drawer and pulled out a printed catalog from a private exhibition 2 years earlier. Hale loaned a final act Leon storyboard to a gala at the Beaumont. He paid 8 figures. The estate withheld comment. He flipped to a glossy page. A staircase, arrows, notes. Rachel's jaw dropped. "It looks similar," Daniel leaned in. "But not the same. The arrowheads are wrong. The baseline's off. Even I can feel it," Kessler nodded grimly. "I raised concerns then. Got shut out. If your ticket is real, and it is, it undermines the crown jewel of Hale's Leon wall. That's motive enough to call you a liar." The room went very, very quiet. Mrs. Flores spoke into the stillness. He wasn't protecting the legacy. He was protecting himself. Emily wiped her face with the back of her hand. Fury rose like heat, so he lit me on fire to keep his castle from burning. Kessler placed the ticket back into its sleeve with a tenderness that broke her. "You need a chain of custody written yesterday," he said, "and independent statements from me and 2 other examiners. Also, there's one more thing I can try. Sometimes when someone writes on a stack of paper, impressions transfer onto the sheet below. Your ticket shows pressure marks that continue beyond its edges." He slid a fresh mylar sheet beneath the ticket and gently rolled a soft graphite stick over it. A constellation of faint lines emerged just past the ticket's border. Parts of letters, numbers, the ghost of a date. Daniel held his breath. "Please, please, please." Kessler squinted. "Jules, 1-3. He shifted the angle. The faintest trace of a name surfaced. Letters staggered as if written on a knee. "Flores." Mrs. Flores breathed. She stepped closer, eyes wide. "It says Flores." They all stared at her. "I was a volunteer usher," she said, voice trembling. "They made me wear white gloves and everything. At the charity screening, I brought Leon a tray of coffee. He asked my name. He said, Flores. Like flowers, good luck." He scribbled notes on the back of a program and she choked on the memory. When he stood up, a ticket fell from his coat. I picked it up and asked if he wanted it. He smiled and said, "Keep it. If you ever need a wish." I put it in the lost and found box. She pressed a shaking hand to her chest. And then I forgot. 60 years of forgetting. Emily felt the floor tilt. The wish had sat between broken plastic keychains and mismatched gloves for decades, then fallen between 2 seats, waiting for a waitress who needed one more than anyone. Daniel exhaled. "We have the date, the venue watermark, the expert, the pressure transfer with her name." He looked at Emily, fierce and bright. "We don't just have authenticity. We have a story only the truth could tell." Kessler handed Emily a typed statement freshly signed. "I'll email scans and spectrographs to 2 colleagues for immediate blind review. You'll have concurrent opinions within 48 hours. Also, document storage." He pulled out a small Pelican-style case with foam. "Loaner, temperature buffered. Keep it in here, not your oven." Emily laughed through tears. "You heard about the oven?" "Journalists talk," Kessler said deadpan. When they stepped out onto the sidewalk, the smoggy sunlight felt different, sharper. The black sedan was there, idling at the curb. The rear window hummed down. Richard Hale's profile was a sculpture, clean, controlled, elegant. He smiled like nothing in the universe could touch him. Miss Carter, Mr. Brooks, Miss Flores. His gaze flicked to the pelican case. Making new friends? Emily stepped closer to the curb, heart still pounding from the lab. We met the truth. You two haven't been introduced? Hale's eyes cooled a degree. Careful. The public is fickle. Today's underdog is tomorrow's joke. I tried to keep you safe. You tried to keep yourself safe, Emily said, the words landing like stones. From my ticket. Something subtle shifted in Hale's face, the smallest tightening at the jaw. He glanced past her, noticing Kessler entering the building behind them. For the first time, calculation replaced condescension. Experts can be bought, he said softly. Maybe yours, Daniel replied. Ours came with a watermark. Hale's smile returned thinner. You're making this adversarial when it doesn't need to be. I have 2 statements going live at 4. You should see them before you celebrate, the window whispered up. The sedan glided away, shark smooth. Rachel blew out a breath. I hate him in 4K. Emily pressed her palm to the case. For the first time in days, she felt something like oxygen in her lungs. Not safety, no, not yet, but leverage. Ground beneath her feet. Back at the Regal Crown, Mrs. Flores unlocked a dusty storage room off the lobby. She rummaged among old boxes until she pulled out a torn cardboard bin labeled Lost and Found, 1960s. Inside, a broken brooch, a tin of mints fossilized into a single lump, 2 gloves that had divorced and remarried badly. And there, riffling the bottom, she found a crumbling manila envelope addressed in an ancient scrawl. To manager. Leone's scribbles. Empty. Someone took the rest, she murmured. But the ticket stayed. Daniel photographed everything. Emily sat on the auditorium steps and ran her fingers over the worn velvet, feeling the decades in the fabric. Rachel dropped beside her. You hearing that? What? The sound of power shifting. Emily smiled, small and stunned. It's quieter than I expected, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She braced herself, then opened it. A friendly tip. Hale's Leone storyboard has a hidden flaw only a real fan would notice. Look at the mezzanine window in his piece. Then watch Echoes' production stills. You'll see it. Signed. Emily stood, adrenaline spiking. Anonymous tip. They want us to look at a flaw in Hale's prized storyboard. Daniel's eyes lit. If his is fake and yours is real, we don't just neutralize his smear. We detonate it. Mrs. Flores stepped into the aisle, smoothing her skirt. Then let's screen a ghost. I'll cue up the reel-to-reel interview in the office, the one the local station did in '63. He mentioned sketches. You'll want that audio. Emily looked at the pelican case in her hands, the little box holding a staircase. A shadow, a signature, and a wish. Then at the tired theater she loved. The friends who refused to let her drown. The war she hadn't asked for but was learning to fight. Okay, she said, voice steady. We finished the story. Outside, somewhere in a penthouse no one could afford to imagine. Richard Hale watched the clock slide toward 4 and called his lawyers. At 3:59, the Regal Crown's projector flickered to life, bathing the dusty screen in light. At 4 2 statements hit the internet. Which one would the world believe first, and which one would survive the night? The Regal Crown's projector hummed, filling the tired old auditorium with a white glow. Emily sat in the front row, clutching the pelican case on her lap. Rachel beside her, arms crossed as if daring the universe to try something. Daniel hunched over his laptop, his face lit by the storm breaking online. At exactly 4 hours, Hale's first statement hit. Independent experts confirmed ticket sketch is forgery. Miss Carter misled public, attempted fraud. Within minutes, it spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed, scammer exposed. Comment sections drowned in jeers, called it. Knew she was lying. She probably drew it with crayons. Emily's phone buzzed endlessly. Hate messages. Threats. Someone had dug up her high school photos and mocked her prom dress. She gripped the case tighter, her knuckles white. But at 4:07, Daniel's post went live. Leone expert reveals authentic ticket. Hidden watermark, date, and lost notes. Attached. Kessler's signed report. High-res photos under UV. The watermark glowing like truth itself. Side-by-side comparisons with Hale's prized storyboard, and circled flaws. The mezzanine window in his authentic piece didn't match a single production still from Echoes in the Rain. His crown jewel was counterfeit. The internet whiplashed. Wait, so Hale's the liar? OMG, the watermark. Ticket Girl might be real after all. Rachel leaned over Emily's shoulder, grinning. Look at this. Can Ticket Girl trending worldwide? And it's not all hate this time, Daniel kept typing furiously. I've cued the audio clip from 63. Leon himself mentioning scribbling notes at the Regal. It's going out at 4:15, that's the nail. Emily sat frozen. Her name was suddenly everywhere again, but this time not just as villain. Some were calling her the girl who saved Leon's ghost. Others demanded Hale answer questions. She felt the tide shifting, but fear still gnawed. What if he buries us with lawyers? He's richer than God. Lawyers can't erase watermarks, Rachel shot back. At 4:15, Daniel hit publish. The grainy interview footage filled screens across the internet. Leon's raspy voice. Sometimes I sketch in the strangest places. Napkins tickets, once at a charity screening in Hollywood. I drew a whole staircase scene on the back of a ticket. Gave it away to a pretty usher. I wonder if she kept it. The comment sections exploded. My God, he literally admitted it. Emily Carter isn't a fraud. She's the freaking finder of the Holy Grail. By 4:30, talk shows were replaying the clip. Anchors debated Hale's motives. Collectors distanced themselves. The same blogs that had called Emily a scammer now scrambled to call her the unexpected heroine of cinema history. But victory didn't feel sweet yet, because at 5:00, Hale stepped onto a stage. Live stream. Cameras everywhere. He stood at a podium flanked by lawyers, his expression carved in marble. Good evening, he began smoothly. The so-called ticket sketch circulating online is a fabrication. The so-called experts are biased, manipulated by individuals with agendas. I will not allow the legacy of Marcus Leon to be tarnished by opportunists. He gestured. An assistant held up his prized storyboard framed behind glass. This is the true Leon artifact verified years ago. Everything else is noise. Emily watched on Daniel's laptop, her stomach twisting. He's doubling down, Daniel muttered. Because he can't afford not to. If yours is real, his fortune collapses, Rachel snorted. Then let's collapse it. They weren't the only ones watching. Within minutes of Hale's broadcast, journalists began asking hard questions. Why did his storyboard's architecture not match production stills? Why had 3 independent experts vouched for Emily's ticket? Why had Leon himself on tape described exactly what she now held? One reporter even pulled up Hale's own tax filings, noting suspicious acquisitions and questionable appraisals. The shark smelled blood. Hale's mask cracked just a hair when pressed about the mezzanine flaw. He brushed it off as artistic license, but the comment threads shredded him. Leon was obsessive about detail. He didn't do license. Back in the Regal Crown, Emily sat trembling, the case still on her lap. I don't know if I can face him. Not in person. Mrs. Flores stepped forward from the shadows of the aisle, her voice steady. Then let the theater face him. This building remembers. You don't have to be louder than him, Emily. You just have to tell the truth where it started. Daniel's phone buzzed. He read the message, his eyes widening. The Historical Film Society just invited you to speak tomorrow. They want you on stage, presenting the ticket alongside the experts. In public. Hale can't spin his way out if you stand there with proof. Emily's throat closed. Me, on stage? They'll eat me alive. Rachel squeezed her hand. Or you'll own the room. You've survived worse already. Silence filled the theater, broken only by the projector's hum. Emily looked up at the dusty screen, remembering all the nights she'd cleaned spilled soda while dreaming of film school, of telling stories that mattered. Maybe this was her story now. Maybe her mother's voice was right. Movies keep us alive. Maybe this wasn't just about a ticket. It was about not letting the powerful rewrite truth. She took a shaky breath. Okay, tomorrow we go public, Rachel whooped and hugged her. Daniel smiled, exhausted but proud. Mrs. Flores dabbed at her eyes. But outside, across the street, the black sedan idled once more. A figure inside raised a phone, speaking into the glow. Richard Hale was already planning his counterstrike. The storm wasn't over. It was moving into open war. The Historical Film Society's auditorium looked like a cathedral built for light. Brass sconces glowed. Velvet seats climbed into shadow. The stage was a clean rectangle of oak with a single lectern, 2 easels and a long table draped in white. Cameras bristled at the back like a second audience. Every row was full. Critics, students, archivists, collectors. And somewhere in the middle, jaw set and eyes cold, sat Richard Hale. Emily stood in the wings with the pelican case hugged to her ribs. Her palms were slick. Her mouth was dry. She told herself to breathe. Beside her, Rachel squeezed her shoulder. Daniel checked his audio feed, then met Emily's eyes. "We tell the truth. We let it ring." 5 minutes, a stage manager whispered. On stage already, Dr. Alan Kessler, calm in his gray suit. A second examiner, Dr. Priya Shah, who'd reviewed Kessler's scans blind. And Margaret Donnelly, counsel for the Leone estate, posture straight as a gavel. Their presence alone hushed the room. The moderator stepped to the mic. "Tonight, the Society will host a demonstration regarding a disputed artifact attributed to Marcus Leone, alongside a review of alleged forgeries in circulation." His gaze flicked toward Hale. All parties were invited. A murmur rolled. Hale's lips curved, but his eyes didn't. "Ms. Emily Carter," the moderator announced, "please join us." Emily's legs moved before she agreed to it. The stage lights hit like a wave. The applause startled her, not thunder but real. She set the pelican case on the table and flipped the latches. The tiny click sounded enormous. She lifted the ticket with gloved hands. The audience leaned forward as one body. Kessler stepped to the overhead camera and aligned the document beneath it. On the projection screen, the ticket bloomed, fibers, perforations, pencil lines, a staircase descending into shadow. He spoke in a teacher's rhythm. "Ticket stock, early 60s ragblend, UV fluorescence. Note the venue watermark, RCT 1963, embedded near the perforation." The UV wand passed. The watermark flared like a secret finally heard. Gasps rippled. Dr. Shah took over. "Handwriting analysis aligns with Leone's rapid signature in shorthand. Arrowheads, entry strokes, terminal curls. Blind verification of stroke pressure confirms an author match to archived notes." Margaret Donnelly approached the lectern, voice clear. "The estate recognizes the ultraviolet watermark as consistent with the Regal Crown Theater's custom run, ordered for the 1963 charity screening. We also recognize the voice of Marcus Leone." She nodded to Daniel, who played the grainy clip. Leone's line filled the room. "I drew a whole staircase scene on the back of a ticket. Gave it away to a pretty usher." Applause swelled, surprised and bright. Emily's chest loosened. For a second, she let herself believe the night might end right there. Truth, a bow, a cab ride home. Then Hale stood. No microphone needed. He took one anyway. "Charming theater," he said smoothly. "Charming story. But sentiment is not science. My storyboard," he gestured, and an assistant in white gloves carried a framed board onto the opposite easel, "was authenticated years ago by experts more rigorous than this." "Pageantry." Kessler stayed expressionless. Dr. Shah's jaw flexed. Donnelly folded her hands. Hale's voice slid into silk. "Let's not forget, con artists often stage spectacles. Con artists often find corroboration." He smiled at Emily, all sympathy sharpened to a blade. "I don't blame the young woman. She's a pawn." Daniel's camera whirred. Rachel muttered, "Jerk." The moderator lifted a placating hand. "We'll compare." He nodded to a technician, and Hale's storyboard appeared on the screen beside the ticket. Same staircase, same angle. Crowd leaning in, Dr. Shah pointed with a laser. The mezzanine window on Mr. Hale's piece diverges from every production still taken during Echoes. The mullion pattern here, she circled a diamond lattice, never existed in any set build. Leone's notes were obsessive about spatial continuity. This is an error a forger makes, copying a later photograph or an artist's mock-up, not Leone's own blocking. Hale's smile thinned. Artistic iteration. Kessler toggled another slide. Overlays. Arrowheads misaligned. Baselines wobbling where Leone's never did. A telltale tremor in strokes that should have been assured. Compounding anomalies, Kessler said. Not one, many. Murmurs took on an edge. Phones lifted. Reporters typed. A hand shot up in the second row. A woman in a dark blazer stood without waiting to be called. Julia Vance, Journal of Providence. Mr. Hale, did you submit your storyboard to the estate for review at purchase? Hale's eyes cooled. The estate was unavailable. Donnelly lifted an eyebrow. The estate was very available. Laughter broke, quick and mean. Hale's jaw worked. He glanced at his assistant, who looked suddenly very interested in the floor. Another voice called, What about the water stain on the lower right of your board? It stops at the pencil line. Real notes bleed beneath. Hale's knuckles whitened on the frame. He recovered. Techniques differ. Paper ages unpredictably. This witch hunt. A man in the aisle stood lifting a badge. Charles Ito, Department of Justice Art Crime Team. Mr. Hale, we'd like to ask you a few questions after the event regarding appraisals you provided for tax advantage on the board in question. The air changed. The audience didn't murmur. It inhaled. Hale's mask finally cracked. This is a setup. It's a reckoning. Daniel whispered into his recorder. The moderator, sensing blood in the water and guidance from counsel, cut in. We'll continue with our demonstration. Kessler nodded to Emily. Ms. Carter, would you display the pressure transfer finding? Emily's hands didn't shake. She slid the Mylar overlay under the document camera. Faint graphite lines appeared beyond the ticket's edge. Scattered letters, numbers, a partial name. Kessler adjusted contrast. The letters sharpened. Flores, Dr. Shaw read quietly. The audience turned as one toward the aisle where Mrs. Flores stood near the back, pearls trembling. I was the usher, she said, voice carrying further than her size should allow. He gave it to me. I put it in a lost and found box. I forgot. Until she found it. She pointed at Emily. That's not forgery. That's a promise circling home. Applause crashed, ragged and heartfelt, then rolled into a standing wave. Emily's throat closed. She bowed her head, tears stinging, then lifted her chin and faced the room. The ovation wasn't for her alone. It was for the ghost of a director, for a theater that refused to die, for a truth hauled out of dust and debt and rumor. A commotion sparked near the stage left door. Hale's assistant, pale and sweating, pushed forward and shoved a folder into the DOJ agent's hands. I'm done, she blurted. He knew 3 months ago. He paid to rush certification. He threatened to ruin anyone who questioned the board. She swallowed. He told me to leak the waitress rumor. Gasps, a rush of bodies standing to see. Hale lunged for the assistant. 2 security volunteers stepped between them. Cameras went feral. Hale rounded on the crowd, voice rising to a shout he couldn't pull back. You parasites. You feed on ruin. I built a world you all begged to enter. And you forged the keys, Julia Vance shot back. The DOJ agent cleared his throat into a mic he hadn't meant to use. Mr. Hale, please step aside. Silence perfect and devastating. Hale did not step. 2 uniformed officers from the hallway did it for him. He didn't fight. That somehow was worse. The room watched a powerful man shrink into the shape of his choices. The moderator, ashen but composed, returned to the lectern. We'll take a short recess. He looked at Emily, then out at the crowd. And when we resume, we'll discuss responsible stewardship of newly surfaced artifacts. The lights lifted. Sound returned, hesitant then loud. People surged forward to shake Emily's hand, to thank Mrs. Flores, to ask Kessler about fiber blends and UV rigs. Rachel cried openly, then laughed at herself for crying. Daniel hugged Emily and actually lifted her off the floor. You did it, he said, voice breaking. You held, Emily laughed, wet, shocked, joyous. We did it, she said. All of us. Out in the lobby, the world had already begun to rearrange. Sponsors withdrew from Hale's gallery. A statement from his board slid across screens. Mr. Hale has stepped down pending investigation. Collectors posted polite threads about reassessing provenance. Reporters lined up to talk to the Leone estate instead of the man with the money. For once, gravity tilted toward the truth. Mrs. Flores took Emily's hands. You brought light into this place, she whispered. You think you just found a ticket? You saved a story, Emily squeezed back. You saved it first, she said. You kept the door open long enough for me to walk through. Donnelly approached, gentle for a lawyer. The estate wishes to acquire the ticket for public display. We do not intend to haggle in the hallway. A smile. But we intend to honor. Emily glanced at the auditorium doors, at the line of people waiting to take a picture of a scrap of paper with arrows and a staircase. She thought of her mother's post-it. She thought of rent and tuition and the quiet, relentless dignity of getting up for the late shift. I don't want it in a vault, she said softly. I want it where kids can stand under it and feel like movies still matter. Donnelly nodded. Then let's make that happen. A reporter called Emily, one statement for the live feed. Emily stepped into the drift of microphones. For once, she wasn't afraid of their light. I'm not a collector, she said. I serve coffee in a theater that leaks when it rains. I found a ticket between 2 seats. That's not genius. That's grace. I didn't beat a billionaire. The truth did, and it always will if we let it breathe. The feed carried her words across a city that had tried to swallow her. Somewhere, in a penthouse now very quiet, a man stared at a blank wall. Somewhere else, in a dorm room with a stack of film theory books, a kid decided not to give up. Back in the auditorium, the moderator tapped the mic again. "If we might return." Emily looked at Daniel, at Rachel, at Mrs. Flores. Daniel raised his camera. "One more shot," he said. "For the end of Act 2. Emily smiled. "Then we write Act 3. She carried the pelican case back to the table, steady now. Outside, night gathered over Los Angeles, but the marquee of the Regal Crown burned brighter than it had in years, and somewhere behind the screen, the old projector purred, patient as a heartbeat, ready to throw light. The bitter end for Richard Hale had begun. The healing finally could follow. The next morning, the Regal Crown Theater was alive in a way Emily had never seen. Reporters camped outside on the sidewalk, not to ambush her this time, but to capture the marquee, where Mrs. Flores had proudly hung new letters. "Thank you. Emily Carter, the story lives on." Neighbors drifted in carrying flowers, coffee and old ticket stubs they'd saved for decades. A film student in a leather jacket approached Emily with tears in his eyes. "You proved it," he said, his voice cracking. "You made them listen." He pressed a folded note into her palm before slipping away into the crowd. Rachel leaned against the concession counter, eyes rimmed red but smiling. "Well, Emmy, looks like you're not invisible anymore." Emily laughed softly, clutching the pelican case to her chest. "Yeah, I'm terrified." Daniel arrived a few minutes later, his camera still slung around his neck. He looked exhausted but exhilarated, like he hadn't slept since the hearing. "You're everywhere," he said, dropping his phone onto the counter. Headlines scrolled across the screen. "Ticket Girl triumphs. Leone's legacy restored. Collector Hale collapses." Rachel smirked. "Collector Hale? More like convicted Hale if justice keeps rolling." Daniel's tone softened. "And they're already calling you the girl who saved cinema's lost ghost." Emily shook her head. "I didn't save anything. I just found a piece of paper." "No," Mrs. Flores corrected gently from behind the popcorn machine, her pearls gleaming in the morning light. "You stood when the whole world wanted you to kneel. That is what people will remember." Emily looked around the theater, the place she had scrubbed gum from seats and wiped soda from carpets, the place her mother had first taught her to love movies. For the first time, it didn't feel shabby or broken. It felt like a temple, glowing with memory and possibility. Later that afternoon, Emily and her allies met with Margaret Donnelly from the Leone estate in a sunlit boardroom downtown. Donnelly placed a formal contract on the table, but her voice was kind. "The estate would like to acquire the ticket for public display in the National Film Archive. We're offering a financial package and a fellowship in Leone studies. You'll have the chance to study film properly if you wish." Emily stared at the papers, her throat tight. Money enough to lift her from the weight of debt. An education her mother had always dreamed for her. And, most of all, a promise. The ticket would not vanish into a vault but hang in glass for everyone. Her voice trembled. "Yes, but only if it stays accessible. People should see it. Kids should stand under it and feel like they're touching history." Donnelly nodded. "That's exactly what we want." Rachel whooped and hugged her so hard the chair squeaked. Daniel just grinned, pride radiating like sunlight. That night, Emily walked back into the Regal Crown. The auditorium was full, not for a blockbuster, but for a community screening. On the screen glowed Echoes in the Rain, unfinished, fragmented, projected from the best reels the estate had restored. The audience leaned forward in silence as the staircase scene flickered, a dream half told, but alive again. Emily sat in the back row, Daniel beside her, Rachel sneaking extra popcorn into her lap. Mrs. Flores stood at the aisle, watching the screen with tears in her eyes, and in Emily's pocket, folded gently, was her mother's post-it. "Movies keep us alive. Emmy, don't let them steal your dream. The ticket wasn't hers anymore." But the dream was. After the film ended, the crowd applauded, not just for Leone, but for the story that had carried his ghost into the present. Emily stood, trembling, and for the first time in years she let herself feel the applause was for her too. Daniel leaned close and whispered, "So what's next for the girl who defied a billionaire?" Emily laughed, wiping her eyes. "Next, I tell stories. Real ones. Ones that remind people that truth matters more than power. Rachel raised her popcorn bucket like a toast. To Ticket Girl, Emily shook her head. No, to all of us, to keeping the light on. The projector hummed behind them, steady and patient. Its glow painted the dust in the air like stars. And in that glow, Emily knew she hadn't just survived. She had begun. The chapter of Richard Hale had ended, bitter and deserved. The chapter of Emily Carter was only opening, frame by frame, light against darkness, truth against greed. And for the first time since her mother's voice had left this world, Emily believed again. She whispered to the screen, to the theater, to the city that had almost broken her, "I'm ready."